Hello and welcome to another motorcycling video. I've got about 25 minutes here to talk to you about whatever it is that interests me, so hopefully you'll bear with me through all of that and you'll listen to what it is I have to talk about, and you'll enjoy the video. If you don't enjoy the commentary, that's okay. Turn the sound down, don't listen to me, just enjoy the scenery. So I'm out on my Spyder. My Spyder is a 2012 RT Limited, and I'm going to tell you a few more things about that. I've owned it for a couple of months now, and whilst I haven't put a lot of kilometres on it, I feel I know a little bit more about it. I feel I'm a little bit more informed, and therefore I can give you a little bit more information and background about it. But before I do that, let me just talk about a few other things. The purpose of me making these motorcycle videos, or any of the other videos I make that you might watch, is just for entertainment. I just do it because I like running and I make videos while I'm running, or I do it because I like motorcycling and I make videos while I'm doing it. I don't make any money out of it. I'm not interested in having sponsorship or advertising or any of that sort of stuff. I just do it for fun and because I enjoy it, and I hope that the people who watch my videos also get some enjoyment out of it, and maybe occasionally they get some useful information. I'm saying all that because my grandson, who's 15, said to me a little while ago, and I may have said this on an earlier video, and if that's the case I apologise for repeating it, but my grandson said to me a little while ago that watching my motorcycle videos was like a podcast with pictures. And I thought that was a nice thing to say, but it also got me thinking a little bit about podcasts. And I guess for any sort of area of interest that people have, any niche interest that people have, any hobby that people have, there'll probably be a podcast of some sort that covers that. And I think that's fine. I think it's okay that anybody who's got a phone these days, or a computer and a microphone, and wants to share their interests with other people, like I'm doing, can do so. It's your choices as the consumer, if you want to put it that way, if you as to whether you watch the video, take in what the person's got to say, and so on. But it got me thinking a little bit about podcasts and what they're like. And I guess one of the thoughts that occurred to me is there are podcasts that just give you information, and that's fine. There are news podcasts, there are podcasts like this one, if you want to put it that way. But then there are podcasts that I feel are almost telling you what to think. This is somebody expressing an opinion, and I suppose I'll be expressing an opinion in some of the comments that I make today, but they're almost at the point of saying, this is what I think, and I think you should agree with me, or I think you should have a similar opinion. My purpose isn't to do that. I'm making a video as a matter of interest. I'm making a video that I hope will be entertaining, and I'm certainly expressing an opinion. And one thing I hope, and I'm not arrogant about this, but one thing I hope would happen is that at the end of the video, if you've sat all the way through it, that at least you have had a thought about what I've said. So I suppose one of the things I like to say is that the commentaries that come with these videos, be they motorcycle related or not, is that at least it gets you to think about whatever it is that I've discussed. And having done that, you might think, well, I don't live in Australia, so that matter doesn't interest me or concern me. Or I don't live in that area, so that matter doesn't interest or concern me. Or I hadn't thought about that thing up until this point. I've thought about it a little bit now. I still don't have much of an opinion on it, but at least I'm a bit more informed than I was before. I'm not trying to suggest that I know anything more about any of the things that I talk about than anyone else does. They're just things that I talk about because I'm interested in them. And I want to share my views about them with you. All right, having said all that, let's get back to the Spyder for the moment and talk about that. So as I said, it's a 2012 Spyder RT Limited. It's the one with the 1000cc engine and the 5-speed semi-automatic gearbox. As I mentioned in one of the earlier videos when I first got the machine, it wasn't long after that, I might have been 2013 or 2014, the manufacturers decided to increase the engine size to 1330, and they made the gearbox a 6-speed, and I can see that both of those things would have been an improvement that was necessary to make. I wouldn't say the 1000cc is underpowered, but I can see that the extra power, the extra bigger engine would have been very useful, and the 6-speed gearbox would make the machine, I feel, perform a bit better, but also be a bit more fuel efficient. So what I thought I'd do first of all is, as I said, I think I know a bit more about it, but still there's a lot to learn. I thought what I'd do first of all is talk about the starting procedure, because that's a little bit complicated. And to do that, I'll give you a bit of a context by telling you about some of the other bikes I've owned and how you get them started. So the bike I owned before this was a Kawasaki Voyager 1700. That's a big cruiser. Now, to get that started is a relatively simple process. Because it's a cruiser, it doesn't have a centre stand, it has a side stand, and it'll start with the side stand down. So you make sure the bike is in neutral so it doesn't try to lurch away from you. Put the key in the ignition, turn it round to on, press the start button, and the engine fires up. It's fuel injected, so it takes a moment or two sometimes, I guess, for the computer systems to adjust. There's a bit of a fast idle, and then it's ready to go. It's got a big heel toe shifter, pulling the clutch, push down on the toe part of the shifter, first gear, and away you go. As I said, relatively straightforward. You can take the key out of the ignition once you've got it started, and you do that because inevitably you've got a key ring and it's got a few other things on it, and it'll scratch up all the chrome that's around the ignition switch on the tanks, and you don't want that, so you take the key out. You've got to put it back in, of course, to turn off the bike and put it in a locket, and you've got to remember to do that rather than just flick off the kill switch. Now, the Suzuki Bergman 650 scooter that I also have, it has a slightly different starting procedure, because it's a scooter for a start that has that constantly variable transmission, or CVT. It means it's always in gear. It has a side stand and a centre stand, and you can start the bike on the centre stand, but you can't start it with the side stand down. I think that's just a Suzuki quirk to avoid you riding off with the side stand down and either toppling the bike over or shearing off the side stand. So you've got to kick up the side stand, and that means you've got to be sitting on the bike to hold it upright. It has a parking brake, and it's a good idea to engage that when you stop the bike so that it doesn't lurch away from you when it starts. Having done that, you put the key in the ignition switch, turn it round to on, and press the start button. If you're not holding one of the brake levers, the bike won't start. So hold the front or back, it doesn't matter which one, but you must be holding one of the brake levers so the bike won't surge away from you. And then press the start button, and the engine will turn over, and it's automatically in gear. And release the parking brake, and away you go. Now, coming to the Spyder, is a multi-stage process. In the first instance, the last time you rode the bike, you have to make sure you turned on the park brake, which is electronic, before you switch off the engine. If you don't do that, then the bike will beep at you, and it'll beep in an annoying way for about 20 seconds till you turn the ignition back on and do it. So the park brake is on. You put the key in the ignition, and then you turn it round to the on position. When you do that, the needles on the speedo and the tacho flicker, so they've come to life, and all the warning lights come on and go off. And then you wait. And you wait a moment, and the centre screen lights up with the Can-Am logo. And then you wait again. And after you've waited a little while, a message comes up on the screen saying press the mode button after you've read the safety card. Now, remember in the first video showing you where the safety card is, but it's just above the dash, and it's just a slide out thing. Obviously you don't have to slide it out and read it every time, but you do have to press the mode button, and the mode button tells the bike you're now ready to start riding. It can cycle through a number of screens, a radio station, whether it's AM or FM, or auxiliary input, or whatever else you've got there, or settings. So you've chosen the screen you want, then you can press the start button, but you must be sitting on the bike to do that, and it's a good idea to keep your foot on the foot brake, because once you release the park brake, the bike will be ready to go, providing you put in gear. So you've got the engine running. It has a fast idle for a moment while the computers adjust the mixture and adjust the idle, and then using your thumb of your left hand, you use the paddle shifter and put the bike in gear. Now you can release the parking brake and gently ease your foot off the foot brake, twist the throttle, and the bike will start moving. Now I'm saying all that because you might have seen in the early part of this video before, where we're up to right now, that I pulled into a fuel stop, service station, or servo as we call them in Australia. There's no service there anymore, but nevertheless, We call them service stations. So you go to the service station, you fill up with petrol. Now to do that, you've got to turn the engine off, make sure you engage the park brake. Then you've got to twist the key around and down, push it down and twist it round to the right so the seat will open. Now that means you've got to get off the bike, of course, and your pillion, if you've got one, has got to get off the bike. The seat's got to open because that's where the filler cap is. And so you've got to, take the cap off to fill the thing up with fuel. Now, once you've done that and you've gone in and you've paid and you've come back out, if you've been off the bike for more than about 5 minutes, all of the computer systems reset, and you've got to go through all those steps again in order to get the bike running again. Now, I'm telling you that because if you're at a service station and there's a bloke on a Spyder in front of you, he's got to go through or she has got to go through all those steps in order to get the bike started. And while you're anxious to fill up, get to the pump and fill up, and you say, come on, mate, get a move on. He's doing everything he can. There's no way to speed the process up. So, as I say, I feel I've learned a little bit more about the Spyder, but I'm still not on top of everything to go with it. When it's on the road and you're just going straight down the road as we are right at this moment, then everything's going fine. It's when it wants to turn it gets a bit tricky. Turning left, I feel, is generally a little bit easier than turning right, and that's because turning left isn't always going to be a full 90-degree turn. Turning right, because we drive on the left side of the road in Australia, is going to be a 90-degree turn, and so there's that leaning your body forward, putting your shoulder in the direction of the turn to the right, pulling your right arm in and close to your body, keeping your elbow close to your body, and pushing out with your left arm and all this sort of stuff. And that gives your body a bit of a workout around your shoulders and around your hips. So there's a little bit still there for me to learn. And hopefully by the time I get a few more kilometres up on this ride or on this machine, I'll be able to make a video and tell you how to do some of those things better than I can at the moment. So at the moment I'm on what is called the Braidwood Road, that it leads from Goulburn through a couple of small towns and villages to Ranna, Lake Bathurst, Tarrigo, then Braidwood, and then down to the east coast, or down to the coast at Bateman's Bay. This section, I guess, is called the Tarrigo Road, and if you see at the moment, we've had a lot of heavy rain down the eastern seaboard, or the eastern states of Australia. That's Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania, and lots of places have been flooded, places have been inundated, property's been damaged and all those sort of things. So I should say to myself that I'm in the fortunate position of none of those things have happened to me or to people that I know. In Goulburn has been pretty well spared from that. We've had a lot of rain, yes, and there's been some minor flooding, but for the most part properties, that is people's houses and so on, haven't been damaged. But I'm saying all that because this road is the major thoroughfare from the southern tablelands where Goulburn is to the east coast, and has a lot of traffic, especially during summertime on the weekends, because people like to go down to the coast for recreational purposes and so on. And at the moment, as you can see just there, this road is in pretty poor condition. Lots and lots of potholes and lots of patches, just like this one's coming up, where the patching up work that the road workers have done has been washed away. And that presents a bit of a hazard for the Spyder. And it presents a hazard because if you've got a two-wheel bike, you've got one wheel behind the other, you can generally navigate a path through the potholes and through the patches where the road is quite rough. That becomes very difficult on the Spyder because you've got two wheels, and the two wheels are almost as wide as a car, as a small hatchback. So I just saw in the patch I went past earlier, and you'll see several more along here where it's almost impossible to avoid one or both front wheels going through the patches. Now sometimes those potholes aren't very deep, and that's fine, you just have to go across them and ride out the bump. Other times they are quite deep, and you can't always tell the depth of the pothole until you're on it. And then you have to be careful to make any sudden movements with the bike, especially if there are other traffic coming the other way. Now, I'm not saying this is a hazard or a dangerous thing about the bike. I'm just saying it's a thing you have to be aware of. You've got two wheels almost as wide as a car. You can't suddenly just swerve around all the potholes in your car, especially if there's traffic coming the other way. And so you can't. The same thing applies on the Spyder. You just can't swerve around some of these things as you might be able to do on a two-wheeler. So that's the thing to think about. Now, just as where we are now here, we're coming up to the entry point place to a racetrack called Wakefield Park, which is just out, as you can then figure, just outside of Goulburn. Now, this track has been in operation for, I'm not exactly sure, but certainly a long time, maybe even 2 decades. It's a racing track for cars, but it's also a place where motoring journalists take their cars to test them, and every now and again they have an open day and you can take your car or your bike out there and pay them whatever the fee is and just hoon around the track for the day. Now, when it was opened here, the local council put certain restrictions in terms of operational times, number of days you could operate, and also certain restrictions on the noise levels that were acceptable. The people who live out this way, and I don't know that there's very many of them, but there are enough of them to make it for it to be of concern, were, whilst they probably weren't thrilled with the idea of having a racing track out in the area, they were prepared to accept the idea that the racing track would be there, and as long as it abided by the conditions set, that it'd be a case of live and let live. Not so long ago, the operators of the course or the track decided they wanted to expand the operations. They wanted to have the track open more days and longer hours, and the local community or the people out there objected on the grounds that, well, when you opened this thing, you said these things were going to happen, and we agreed to that. We weren't happy about it, but we agreed to that. You agreed to certain noise levels, certain days of operation and so on, and now you want to add more to that, and we're not happy about that. The matter went to various sorts of arbitration before it went to the Land and Environment Court of New South Wales, who ruled against the operators of the track and said, well, you have to stick to the agreement you made when you opened the business. And the operators said, as a consequence of that decision, they said, well, we can't make any money. Because we're not open enough days, we're not making money, and they closed the track. Now, it's claimed that the track brings in somewhere between $17 and $30 million of business to Goulburn. And that's a huge gap. The truth is, it's probably somewhere between the two. I don't know the exact amount, but generally when you hear claims like that, the truth is somewhere between those two figures. That's a sizable amount of money that comes into the town, not just from people coming to the town, but from staying, for those people who come, that's often a weekend thing, so they stay in accommodation. So there's hotels, there's meals, there's people paying entry fees, there's food out at the track and so on. So it would be a sizable amount of money turned over through the place. But the operators said, well, on that basis, we can't make any money, and they closed the track. There's a petition circulating online at the moment to allow the track to be reopened. And I can see both sides of this argument. I'm not a petrol head, despite the number of toys I own, and despite making motorcycle videos. I'm not particularly interested in motor racing of any sort. That's not to disparage it. It's just I'm happy with people who are interested, and I'm not interested in it. So I see that people say, well, motor racing is a thing I like, and it's a recreational thing I'm interested in, or it's the way I earn my living because I come down here and I race my cars, or I'm part of the team, or whatever it is. And the operators say, well, we're running a legitimate business where what we do is legal and so on. We should be able to continue to do our business and make money and so on. All of those things are valid arguments and make a lot of sense. On the other hand, there are the people who live out that way, and they're mostly farmers or people who've wanted a tree change and wanted a bit of land outside of town. And they're saying, well, we bought land out here because we wanted to get out of the town. We wanted to be outside of Goulburn. We wanted to be on a little bit further out of town and away on a bit of land and space of our own, and we wanted to be away from the noise and the bustle of the town. Now, I should say Goulburn's a place of about 25,000 people, so it's not a huge place, but like all places, there are lots of cars and there's lots of traffic. And so there are people who say, well, I like the peace and quiet of being out in the country, and I don't want that to be disturbed by loud cars racing around a track on numerous days per year. So I can see both sides of that argument, and I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I just see that both people have a valid point of view, but it does bring up the question, I guess, of any sort of development anywhere that's located near where anyone lives. There are talk about solar farms, there are talk about wind farms. People are especially are opposed to wind farms because of the noise they make. And there's that derogatory term NIMBY, which stands for not in my backyard. Yes, it's good to have one of these things, whatever it is, but I don't want them in my backyard. Again, I can see both points of view. So I'll just sort of talk about that and leave it to you to think about that if you're a local, and even if you're not a local and you think, well, okay, a legitimate business has been closed, let's move on. So we're on the road between Goulburn and Tarrigo, and you can see here this particular patch of it just going through right now, and I've been describing the poor state of the road and the effect that all the rain and flooding has had on the roads of late. This road itself is in reasonably good condition. There's other than those points I've just made, the shoulder on the left-hand side on both sides seems reasonably wide. So if cyclists were on there, were riding there, they could ride on the shoulder. Or if you were thinking of running along this section, there's a shoulder that's wide enough for you to get away from the traffic. For the most part, there are markings on either side of the road, which are important on country roads at night to show the riders and drivers and runners and whoever else where the edge of the road is. There's a marking down the centre of the road that makes it clear when it's safe to pass and so on. There are those white posts on either side of the road, and all those things are important. You see more of those patches, rough patches that I've been talking about, and see how wide they are and how difficult it is for the two wheels at the front of the Spyder to avoid them. So all of those things are important for the state of a country road. We expect those of our highways, but also we should expect that the main arterial roads between various parts of main arterial roads like this that are the road from the southern tableland to the east coast would be well maintained and in good condition, have good markings and so on. I'm saying that just because some of the other roads that I've been on recently when I've been riding around don't have those things. There are no markings on the sides of the road. There are none of those white posts. And there's not even a marking down the centre of the road in some cases, so you're sort of taking potluck and making your own judgment. So we've passed Tarrano, as I said, and we've passed the Wakefield Park Raceway. I think coming up now to a place called Inverology, which used to be an agricultural college at one stage, and then for a while was a drug and alcohol rehabilitation centre, and then has reverted to its original ownership, which was with Catholic Church, and I believe it's now a monastery for the Paulian Fathers. It's quite an impressive and historic looking building. You'll see it up on the left hand side fairly shortly, I think. So you can see here more of the road conditions I'm talking about. It's a bit of a sort of cloudy, overcast day, but it wasn't cold and wasn't raining, so that was all a blessing. And it wasn't windy as well. There's a small bridge that you cross just as you're coming to past this Inverology. It's called Inverology Creek, and there used to be a rail siding there. The rail siding doesn't operate anymore, of course, and the creek, I think this time when I went over it, didn't have much water in it. So we're just going past the entrance just here, and the bridge will be coming up very shortly. So I'm going to say thank you for watching, and if you've got all the way to this point in the video, I hope you've had your thoughts stimulated about some things, and if not, you've just had your eyeballs stimulated by some interesting scenery. And I'll say thank you for watching. We're just crossing Inverology Creek, and you can see the bridge here. Thank you for watching. There will be a second video to follow once I've made the audio and so on and thought about the things I'm going to talk about. If you have feedback or comments that you'd like to make, I'm more than happy for you to do that, and I will try and respond to them. As I said, I welcome those comments and feedback. I welcome the fact that people are interested in what I've done and what I've got to say, and I will try and respond to them in any way that I can. enjoy your day. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you again when I'm making the next installment of this video, which will take us from here on towards another small town just out of Queanbeyan called Bungendore.